You're zipping by it fast.
We don't get to speak to 7, so I think some of them will probably be coming a little late. You guys know that guy's school soccer that you're saying in the book?
Oh.
It's the what? Yeah, if you want to speak.
Oh, I did
No.
not.
If you don't want to speak over your name on this.
No, I'm just here to support.
I know, I did too. I'm like, get him up there.
I'm just here to support your speech.
Yeah.
Should we
Sounds good. I think I can. Yeah. I think I have this board. Yeah. Yeah, I first those. They're we got last week I did look at one up. Why the if I could, I might as well just hey, that was
You're the new people with the and your husband. I've met your husband. I think he's
great.
from
He's a good judge.
he's from Bulgaria. Yes, I think he's been here a long time. He showed me your house. He brought some.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very
But Costco. I'll go with Costco. That's your life. Right next. Right next. No, I could have really trying to let the kids get ahead of me. I like those chocolate covered milk balls. I like them.
Yeah, I have to order and pick it from.
Right.
There's a sausage that's totally rotten. I have to fix it. Yeah, that's true. That's on my to-do list.
Welcome to our tonight's meeting. Would you please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion on the amended agenda?
Is your mic on?
Commissioner McMahon makes a motion. Need a second.
Second.
Oscar seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Carries. Okay. Recess. A motion to recess for health and human services.
that's for Health and Human Services as a whole.
Okay, Commissioner McNair makes a motion, need a second?
Second?
Commissioner Buck, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Start Health and Human Services Committee. We have to approve the agenda for committee, or just go ahead and do it. Okay. Well, Nancy, then you're up for directors update.
Good evening, happy spring or April 1st. This evening I realized that I wrote a rather long report, but it was hot off the press. I was actually sitting at a meeting in St. Paul listening to the state staff explain most of these items that I will share with you this evening. And so certainly we want to talk with you about the governor's task force recommendations relating to the work of child protection. And so, as you know, the governor has appointed a task force to review the child protection system in the state of Minnesota, and it has many players on that task force. And that group is making recommendations throughout the session for improvements in the child protection system. And so 2 of those task force recommendations were passed through the legislature and signed by Governor Dayton on March 17th of this year. And those recommendations allow for the use of a past history of reported child abuse and neglect to assist in making decisions on current reports, and places the safety of children as the first consideration in child protection ahead of keeping families together. And if you're around, have been around with us for a while, you might recognize some language around concurrent planning and family assessment kinds of activities that actually have the department figuring out how to keep children safe in place with their families. And so that's kind of shifted a bit, but please know that your department has adopted and operationalized those 2 recommendations as ordered. Now we're watching that task force report. There are many additional initiatives and thoughts in that report, and the legislature will have to make some decisions around whether they'll be adopting all of those things. But things that are coming out is discussion about caseload sizes and supervision and training, additional oversight by the state, more engagement with our county attorney's office when making decisions to close or discontinue service. And so as those items either become law or considered, we'll be doing some work with you here locally as to how would we implement those changes and what, if any, costs would be associated with that. Certainly the legislature, we know, would need to vote to put some money into this system on a statewide basis. But certainly folks are taking child protection very seriously, and that's not a bad thing. The governor's budget proposal includes additional funding for both counties and DHS to enact some of the workload recommendations, and the operational or performance outcomes tied to this work are as follows. Outcome 1, one of those measures are about adults and children are safe and secure. Percent of children with a maltreatment determination who do not experience a repeat maltreatment determination within 6 months. These are the things that we'll all be measuring. Children have stability in their living situation, and so that would include measuring the percent of child support paid and percent of children discharged from out-of-home placement to reunify in less than 12 months of having left their parental home, and that children have the opportunity to develop to their fullest potential, and that would be measured by the percent of children in family foster care that were placed in a relative home and where child support cases have paternity established. And so there are many markers that we'll be reporting on. This is just a small list, but your department will be working with these performance standards as time moves forward. In Chisago County, we've seen a change in child protection activity over the past 12 to 18 month period. Although the maltreatment reports have been relatively stable over this time, meaning they haven't really spiked, there's been an increase in the types of reports that require an investigative response. Typically those are situations alleging substantial child maltreatment as physical injuries, sexual abuse, and endangerment or possible serious harm. So in looking at our software system and our cases, we see about a 20% increase in family investigations assigned in 2014 from 2013. We had 44 cases in 2013 and 57 in 2014. And 2015 looks like that number will be higher than 2014. We are seeing younger children in our system who are faced with serious risks, and that's demonstrated in the increase in numbers of children under 3 years of age who've had a maltreatment determination found. So there were 4 in 2015 to date, and 7 in 2014 in its entirety, and 1 in 2013. Now that wasn't that we just had 1 3-year-old, but these are cases that did not go to a family assessment versus an investigation. So staff are certainly citing things like what appears to be an increase in methamphetamine use and other drugs being introduced back into the community is one of the reasons we're seeing these younger children in care. And then I also shared with you the number of children requiring foster care placement resultant of these types of cases. And so unduplicated counts of 99 children in 2014 and 83 in 2013, and we believe the head count will be somewhat higher than 2014 as this year ends. We're looking for county foster homes. Thankfully, we had 12 new families come to orientation, and we hope to be working with those folks. Our staff do run a recruitment and orientation for foster care providers, and so that was the head count at recent orientations. And so we also, in complementing the foster care file or foster care work, then we purchase services such as child care and supervised visitation and other types of professional services in that whole array. And so this is a service area that we'll be wanting to talk with you more about as the year goes on and as we enter our budgeting time. The recent legislative language changes our language from more child maltreatment to child safety, and so we'll start using new terminology with the governor's task force. Our local citizens review panel, along with 3 other county citizen review panels, have been able to provide valuable input to the governor's task force on child protection, and we want to thank those community members that gave up their time to serve on Chisago County Citizens Review Panel, and it's one of few in the state. I think there's about 3, and so that's a very good thing. They actually will review cases that we've had to see if our determinations are correct, or will also hear appeals. Aging and disabilities, we've talked a lot about that area these past months. We continue to work on stabilizing those services and focusing on staffing and modifying processes to support the staff, clients, and vendors that work with Chisago County. The week of March 23rd, we did host a meeting with the case management companies holding Chisago County contracts, and we reviewed the workflow with those entities, and with a focus on problem solving and improving processes related to client authorization and actually getting the vendors paid. So we had a little drag there that needed some fixing. Parties are most interested for a time when we are able to connect electronically with these external case management providers, and we're hoping that the state of Minnesota is successful in placing the SSIS system, which is our case management system, into the web-based cloud and off of our network, and then we're anticipating or hoping then connectivity with our case management software will be much cheaper for the county to effect and very affordable. So we're looking for that to happen. Right now we're doing a lot of manual work between the companies. The staff continue to be trained on a number of functions within the unit. Friday, March 27th, the state staff came out on site to North Branch at our invitation to train process related to client placement and payment authorizations for seniors and disabled persons placed in assisted living facilities. And I have to say the State Department in this area has been supportive and responsive to our request for training, so I'm thankful for that. Recruitment and hiring continues. Since we were last together, there are 2 new staff on the workboard. 2 more are confirmed for mid-April start dates, and our Human Services Department has been a very good partner in that effort. So again, we're always looking at projected client service volume and that's a moving target in this particular area. I think Administrator Messel will be sharing some information with you, or has, around some hiring in Stearns County, but they're probably also realizing volume is an issue. The income maintenance.
Let's wait till she's done. She's got a couple chapters to read yet.
Oh, I won't read them all. Thank you. Income maintenance unit, we've trained 5 additional existing personnel on MNsure program. On the average, we're receiving about 25 new paper applications a week from our State Department of Human Services. And they continue to issue the ask. I might have shared that with you in a previous meeting. They're looking for 20 county staff to come work down at the State Department and help with the MNsure system. And I appreciate their need for staffing, but will politely decline that request. The launch of the Blue Zone Scripts program within the NMIS program, now NMIS is where the income maintenance programs are running, resulted in a greater case efficiency in the service set, and that's what enabled us to train more personnel in the MNsure process, and then attend to those increased paper applications. Just a remark, your staff assisted about 4 people that realized a need for temporary shelter, a resultant of a fire in a facility in Rush City in mid-March. And so how we did that, we had some emergency general assistance funds remaining in the county allocation to aid in this endeavor. And so thank you to the staff for their immediate response and ongoing work in that particular situation. Mental health, the results are just about done for the survey that Chisago County was part of. We've talked about that in previous meetings. We've asked the Improve group to work with us on a local presentation and reading of those survey results. I haven't seen them yet, but this is a survey that we asked to be rather broadly delivered across the county of Chisago and the other 4 counties in the Pickham area. And this should help guide planning for mental health services, present and future. And so we're very anxious, as are several vendors. They've been asking when is that done, and so we'll be sharing that with you mid to late April and sending an invitation. This is Public Health Awareness Month, and the programs in public health continue to be very active. Interviews are calendared for open positions, and we hope to have those all offered by May 1st. That's the goal. Our State Department of Health indicates it's time for counties to make their decision about whether we would enter SHIP programming. That's the Statewide Health Improvement Program. This last 2-year period, we have been in a collaborative effort with the other 4 counties in Pickham, with Canadian County as the fiscal host. Now, this particular grant round is for a 5-year commitment, and so when you think of us in 5 years, we'll be in year 2020, kind of hard to think about, but perhaps we should consider going on our own per shift, and that's what I'm talking with our staff about. The recent State Department ITD, they reduced some of their program reporting and other grant requirements, making it a little more feasible for us to be operating our own SHIP program with a sole focus on Chisago County and being its own fiscal host. And so I'm meeting with staff tomorrow to talk in more detail about that, but I would certainly appreciate your thoughts. There are benefits to both a regional effort or a local effort. And so the public health director and myself have a phone call scheduled later this week too. That's an April 15th deadline to make that decision and advise the state what our position will be. We currently collaborate with them. It's not a joint powers agreement, but we've agreed to work together, and it's been a grant application to the State Department of Health. So that's the biggest decision, probably, aside from many others in the department in these next few weeks.
Is that it?
That's it.
You did good. George, you're up.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot what I was going to ask.
Write it down next time.
It was something about the request from the state to provide staff from counties to the state to trained to do training, is that?
Train, problem solve is one of the words the state staff used.
Okay,
MNsure continues to be a challenge in its delivery. Perhaps a little better since its inception, but nonetheless, there's a lot of work to do. And so, state staff indicated they realize that people at the local level know how to deliver these programs, and they realize there's some process kinds of things to figure out, and so they were asking for 20 county employees, and preferably they're looking for people from outstate counties. And there was talk of even reimbursing hotel stays and mileage and meals and
You gotta bring donuts next meeting.
yeah.
and all kinds of things to make that a possibility. And so they've been asking for that for about 3 months now, and I'm well aware that they haven't filled those seats, so
Well, that's too bad.
it is too bad.
Because it's really, we have to do that to get people up onto the system. It's too bad that we can't, well, we don't have enough help ourselves.
It's a little tight, I haven't asked for fills on the recent people we've moved to other parts of the department, and so, yeah, we didn't raise our hand.
Anybody else have anything?
It's like a year-long commitment.
Oh, anybody? Nothing? Okay,
To
we'll move on to the
talk
other.
to you about the RDAs, place for your consideration is personnel requisition. And I really want you to understand this requisition. It's a requisition for a case aide, not a new type of position in the department at all. But what's different is that I've identified a vacated office support position, and it was vacated around October or November 2014. And as we've looked at everything, workflows, and I've been able to work a little more closely with the Aging and Disabilities Unit. And there's folks up there in the same classification talking to me about their upcoming retirement. I'm asking that you would approve an upgrade of that open office support position to a case aide. It's a reclassification request, and the funding for that would come from, there was a .8 position in our accounting area that we thought we would need, and surrendering that using the sum of the funds from that position to affect the reclassification. And why don't we need the office or the case aide position in accounting? We've sent out now, I think, a little over 400 files for private case management companies, and so we're not doing the billing on all those cases. So that's where that shift is occurring. So it would not be my intent to come back and ask you for an accounting position as well. But the case aide position in particular in the aging and disabilities area is really needed. So that's why I'm presenting this evening.
Before we do that, does someone wanna make a motion that we pay the HHS bills? Motion by Commissioner McMahon, second by Commissioner Walker to pay the bills. Any more discussion? Commissioner Walker?
What is, the $105,000 worth of warrants, what does that encompass?
On the bills paid, I do not have the bill detail in front of me, but it's pages and pages of
You have it in your packet.
individual bills.
I just have the summary of
It's in here.
$90,000 and $15,000.
Yeah, the individual listings are here. They were in your packet.
It's right here.
I don't know if you get a redacted packet, but it's a summary of all the
we get it.
bills
We
for
get
all
it.
the types of programs we paid.
Ms. Walker.
So it might be detox, it might be child foster care, it might be transportation, it could well be Max's bills, some of the bills we pay to a state to run our software systems. So it's any bill that's been paid and recognized in the Health and Human Service Department as a whole. So it'd be public health, income maintenance, and the Social Service Department.
Did you find
This
your
one must
copy?
not be it, it's just the $450 to the Association of Muslim Counties.
Here, I'll try to get the other one.
So it had dues and,
So in your packet, you've got three. If you go to the front page,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I see here,
Health and
okay.
Human Services auditors warrants,
So,
and then there's commissioner warrants.
This is for the Health and Human Service Department as a
Health and
whole.
Human Services,
Okay.
auditors warrants, and then you'll have a Health and Human Services Commissioners vouchers.
Can I ask a little bit about the bills that are on the, do you mind answering some questions?
I'll sure try to answer, I don't have them in front of me, but it looks like you have a redacted copy there, Commissioner, so the redactions would have the, thank you, Janet. Okay. The redactions are actual client file names
Yes.
associated with the bill.
Okay, so that, I'm seeing a lot of dental insurance, medical insurance, a lot of travel, mileage reimbursements. Those are all client related, or are they staff
Well, they,
requests, or?
well, the dental and the health insurance things, I'm quite sure are cost-effective healthcare payments. And so for folks that are on the programs, if it's more cost-effective for us to pay a portion of their employer-sponsored healthcare than for the state to pay for their total medical assistance or min choice, then we make that small payment. So that's, I'm sure they're cost-effective healthcare payments because we're not paying dental or health for like children in foster care. Mileage could be a mix of staff mileage reimbursement. It could be mileage for family to see their child at court order at a treatment facility. It could be mileage paid out of a special mental health allocation for a person in a mental health program to go see their therapist. And so just kind of think of all the possible scenarios that you might have a mileage claim. We may have gotten a mileage claim from another county that had to transport one of our consumers for any variety of things, a court engagement or a doctor's appointment that wouldn't have been covered by medical assistance for some reason. It might be a supervised visitation on a case, might be respite for a mentally ill child, so it's everything.
I see, well, quite a bit of worker travel. One instance, there's about $200 expense for 3 trips. Can you talk to me a little bit about what we're reimbursing for staff travel?
Our, without the figure in front of me, I'll just take a guess. I think in 2014, I think our bill was about $127,000 department-wide, some hundreds. And so the staff are reimbursed for when they do the business of the department or the county. And so individual case management folks, their job is actually out at the client base, and they are reimbursed for that. And so we have a county mileage reimbursement policy, and this last few years with Administrator Messel, we've been fortunate enough to get county cars to use too. And so the staff, the policy is that they're to use the county car, and if the county car is not available, they would get a 55 mileage per mile reimbursement, and lower reimbursement if they chose to use their own car for some reason. But they get a mileage reimbursement, so we don't have people bear the cost of our business that way.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the bills? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, now the next one is the
The
personnel
requisition.
request for the case aid.
Right, so this is a request to reclassify an existing office support position to a case aid, and so that's a higher classification. And so as I was explaining, the funding from that I've taken from an accounting position that we will not ask to be filled out of the present 2015 budget. And
Okay.
so,
A motion by Commissioner Green, second by Commissioner McMahon. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carried.
the next item I would like to talk with you about is the Healthcare Coalition Letter of Agreement. This is not a joint powers, it's a letter of agreement between the counties of Chisago, Pine, Kanabec, Mille Lacs,
Sherburne, Wright, Benton, Morrison, Crowing, Cass, Wadena, Todd, and Stearns. And this, letter of agreement lays out how each of the counties will interact with each other in the situation that, requires us to activate our emergency preparedness system. Hopefully, we don't have to do that. But it also lays out how the partners will work, in other matters related to public health preparedness activities. And so again, it's not a joint powers agreement. We do get a preparedness grant. All of the counties get that from the Minnesota Department of Health. And so this is the guidance from the State Department of Health on how we are to work together and what vehicle they expect us to use.
Okay, motion by Commissioner McMahon, second by Commissioner Green. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion opposed, motion carried.
And lastly, the National Citizen Review Panel conference request, and you have seen this conference request, I believe, several times through your tenure. And so Chisago County does receive, through its Department of Human Services at the state level, a grant. I think it's about $3,000 on an annual basis for purposes of supporting our Citizens Review Panel. And one of the ways we work with that group of lay people from our community is that we train them. And so this conference is the conference for citizen review panels, and we would recommend that they be allowed to attend this conference using some of those grant dollars.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
This is out in Oregon, I think.
It's different states every year.
Yeah,
So
do they
this,
only
yes,
have
the
one?
RPA says Portland, Oregon.
Do they only have one place a year? So
Yeah.
guys from the East Coast gotta go all the way
I
to
think so.
Oregon?
I have never been there myself, but
I just,
it occurs across the nation.
well, it's not tax, we're not paying for any of it, but it's,
It comes out of that grant. I mean, you could
Comes out of
say
the
your
grant.
state taxes come back around to you this way.
it just, to
I
me,
don't budget for it out of your
it would,
money now.
it'd been nice if they could have one in the Midwest, one in the East Coast, and one in the West Coast. This is all there is, and either we say yes or no, so.
I'll move it.
Motion by Commissioner McMahon, there, second? Second by Commissioner Green. Any more discussion? Commissioner Walker?
Is it possible to teleconference to save these tax dollars?
I have not.
These people teleconference this
It doesn't look like it would work. I went through the agenda on that. It'd be almost impossible to do
I
that.
think it's beginning with breakout sessions. It's an excellent question. We're asking that on all of our activities.
I don't see how it would
Haven't
work.
done the homework on this.
Would you,
We saw how our teleconference works here. It doesn't work at all, so. Commissioner Osgood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just check into that if possible?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So,
Mr. Chair, I'll move the Health Insurance Services Committee and hold the recommendations on to the consent agenda of the county board.
okay, there's a second. Second by Commissioner Green. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I think you're done with a minute to spare. You got a minute to spare, so
Thank
get,
you very much.
get going.
Thank you, Nancy. Good job.
Motion to adjourn, Health and
Yeah.
Human Services.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Rick, take it.
Thank you.
I can do the introduction if you'd like.
Go ahead.
The Citizens Forum is held at 7 p.m. on board meetings. The Citizens Forum is provided so that citizens may make comments, statements, questions, or proposals. Citizens are limited to 3 minutes and are asked to conduct themselves in a professional, courteous manner and to refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of the privilege to speak in the evening. First person who signed up to speak at Citizens Forum is Denise Carlson.
Hello, I'm Denise Carlson. I am making my third appearance in regards to the moratorium being placed in Chisago County against sexual offenders. I must say, after seeing that this issue did not meet this week's agenda, causes great concern. After approaching the board on March 4th regarding sexual offenders residing in Chisago County, Commissioner Monska clearly stated he would like to do whatever he can regarding this issue, and if there's any legal statute he wanted to pursue it. He also recommended a moratorium be put in place quickly until a proper ordinance could be looked into. On March 18th, the county attorney approached the board with a full description and background information on predatory offenders. With respect to her research, I do not feel Chisago County and San Diego is a fair comparison. She went on to explain how the laws aren't particularly effective and a majority of offenders go elsewhere when they reoffend. She noted research shows only about 12% offend in the residing area. Well, I'm here to tell you that my family is at 12% chance they may not offend elsewhere. Many people in this room are that 12% chance they might not offend elsewhere. I am not sure the end result for putting a moratorium in act, as Commissioner Monska had asked, was followed through with. After reviewing the last board meeting, it is clear motions are going unrecorded, and when Commissioner Walker made a motion, it slipped under the radar and was dismissed. As Commissioner Robinson said, who are we afraid of upsetting? And I guess I ask, what is the holdup? Do you want to be known as the county that protected its citizens? Or do you want to be known as the county that was more concerned about retaliation? When there's clear documentation on how to enforce the moratorium, why would you not put it in place? The surrounding cities all have an ordinance in place to protect their citizens, which in result pushes these offenders out to the rural areas. I don't appreciate Sheriff Duncan downplaying that there have only been 3 level 3 offenders released into Chisago County. Well, 2 of them have been my neighbor, and both violated probation. Are we waiting for the next offender to move in, or are we waiting for the recent offenders to be released from prison in 8 months and again be placed in Chisago County to create a community uproar? I would like to know who is willing to attend the next public notification meeting, letting the community know that while Lindstrom, Chisago, Taylor's Falls, Schaefer, Wyoming, and North Branch all have the right protection put in place, Chisago County didn't feel the risk was high enough to put a moratorium into act. I truly hope, as our elected officials, you prioritize your agenda and put the safety of the community as a priority. Whether a special board meeting needs to take place just on this matter, or whatever it may be. But every day that goes by without the proper protection in place is putting the community at risk. Thank you.
The next person who's signed up to speak is Caroline Morelius. Did I say that right?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm not sure that I'm actually prepared to do a appropriate presentation, but I do think that the county should be aggressive in putting restrictions on housing for offenders. And one of the things that I thought that could be addressed was the definition of a family and how many offenders or individuals that are on probation could live in one household. And currently, housing can be up to 5 unrelated individuals. If there was a restriction on how many individuals that are on probation could live in an individual in a household, that would discourage. Say they restricted it to 1 person that was on probation. Therefore, they could have 5 people renting a home, but only 1 could be on probation. I hesitate, or I do believe it would be difficult to rent a home with 4 people that are not on probation and that 1 that is on probation. It would make it much more difficult for property owners to rent to 5 unrelated individuals, all of which are on probation. We have 2 properties that are affected by rentals that are basically people who are on probation, and 1 is in Lindstrom, 1 is by the Quick Stop. We have the little house that is probably somewhat uninhabitable. We have had difficulties in renting it basically because of the commotion that is always ongoing at that large White House on Moberg. And it is somewhat difficult for me to comprehend the amount of monies that are spent by our sheriffs, by our local police to manage the ruckuses that are ongoing so frequently. The difficulties in renting to get someone in that house have been ongoing, although the last renter that we had, it's a couple, and he is a Vietnam vet, and he says it does not compare to what he experienced in Vietnam. He says he keeps a gun at his side at all times.
Mr. Verlies, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
You bet. Next person is Mr. Sean McMurray.
Hello, Sean McMurray. I have a piece pamphlet that I'd like to hand each one.
You can hand it to me, sir.
Okay. I have one for the county attorney also. What those are is those are the regulations set in place right now. One's for Taylor's Falls, you got Lindstrom, you got Chisago City, you got Wyoming North Branch. The city of Shaper has their city council meeting on the 7th. It's on their agenda to pass that if it goes through on the 7th. So that would mean most of the cities around us are pushing all these people out to the county. We're tired of it. We don't want them in the county no more. We don't want our kids at risk, our wives at risk, everybody else at risk. There was a moratorium that was supposed to be placed on the 4th. There was supposed to be work done on that moratorium, and nothing got done on it. It was supposed to go into effect immediately to limit where these people are allowed to go. Monska asked for it. It hasn't went anywhere. This is like a dead issue. We're not gonna let it die. This thing's gonna be strong on our minds. You think we brought people tonight, next week meeting, we're gonna bring more and more and more and more until this gets passed. We need it to go through. We need protection out there. If these cities need protection, we need protection also. That's all I got to say.
Next is Brooke Lacey Orphan, is that right, or Orphan?
Orphan.
Orphan, thank you.
And perhaps to right neatly.
Looks good.
Hello, my name is Brooke Lacey Orphan. I live in the Sunrise Trails development across the street from the offender's site that we're speaking about. I'm absolutely disappointed that it's not on your agenda tonight. We were kind of told that we were going to work on it, that there were some different ideas that you guys were going to look into, including a park situation. I know last week, 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Robinson was talking about the daycare. And so then we kind of spoke a little bit more about perhaps a park ordinance would be more appropriate and more doable. The community needs to know that the board and the county are willing to work with us, and when things are not shown on the agenda, it doesn't give a very good impression to the rest of us. We, again, would like to create some type of ordinance that the other cities are passing, and there's been some word that the board is kind of being told that, maybe if we don't say anything or do anything, then those of us here in the community will just kind of go away. And I guess I just kind of wanted to say that that's not the case. We feel strongly about this and we want something done. Thank you.
That's all who signed up for tonight.
I would like to make a motion that we put a moratorium in place until Janet gets her work done. Janet's been working on it, and I've talked to her about it. I'd like to make the motion right now to put a moratorium in place starting right now on this until Janet comes with a recommendation. So it'd be might only be 2 weeks or whatever.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson makes a motion, Commissioner Walker seconds. Okay, any further comments? Go ahead, Bruce.
First of all, as parliamentarian, you should amend your agenda if you're going to discuss an item. And then second of all, I think if you want an update from the attorney prior to taking action, that would be, probably a good thing to get to.
Commissioner
Well, seeing that there's at least two members that are interested in this issue now, I would move to amend the agenda to allow for discussion and action on the issue of a county ordinance related to sexual offender and sexual predator residence prohibition penalties exemptions.
Okay, you accept that now?
Yeah, that's fine.
You accept it, okay.
No, let's hear from Janet and maybe
Yeah, Janet,
vote on
can
it.
Can you vote to amend the agenda first?
I'll make a motion.
We already made it.
Oh, you did it?
They added it to the motion.
Yeah,
No,
I
no, no,
agree.
no,
You want, what?
You should make a motion and second and
I
then
mean,
vote.
Okay.
You need a second then?
Yeah, he needs a
I'll
second.
Okay, and then if you,
Commissioner Mosca.
then if you would vote to amend the agenda.
Okay.
All in favor to amend the agenda, say aye.
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 Now, do you want to move this up ahead of consent agenda then?
Yes.
Let's do it right now.
Okay. Wanna do it right now?
Let's do it right now.
Okay.
But let's talk to Janet. Before we
Janet?
vote on it, let's see if Janet has any advice for us.
I have been working on this issue since our last meeting on March 18th, and I have been doing additional research as to what would be an appropriate and enforceable ordinance. And I apologize, I did not get this put on the agenda for tonight's meeting, but I do have a draft of a moratorium that would be appropriate if the board made adequate findings. I think that it's important that this board make appropriate findings, that there is no state statute that governs this area of restrictions for predatory offenders in our communities. My recommendation to the board is that you would impose a up to 90-day moratorium prohibiting predatory offenders from establishing residency in Chisago County within 2,000 feet of a school, park, playground, or licensed daycare facility. I think that that is sufficiently tailored to meet the needs of the county to protect the children in our county, and noting that those are locations where children are likely to congregate, and that noting that this is narrowly tailored to meet that desired goal, I think it would be appropriate and enforceable. So I will leave it at that. I will also note that I have reached out to our Parks Department to identify parks. I've reached out to our Health and Human Services Department to identify the licensed child care facilities. This is fairly complicated and is not a straightforward matter. I have reviewed the ordinances that are in place in the other in our municipalities. I, at this point in time, would suggest that we take a slightly different approach to meet the designated goal.
Go ahead.
I would like the moratorium to be county-wide until everything for now. That's what everything.
Okay, you wanna go with her recommendations?
Well, I don't think,
No,
I don't think,
that's not what she said.
no.
I think
What
Commissioner
I wanna
Robinson
do,
wants to cover
and
everything.
it might be against the law or whatever, but I wanna do it county-wide until we pass an ordinance.
That's
And
what
it
I
could be
wanna do too.
it could be 2 weeks, or it could be a month, or whatever, but I wanna do it for now. I wanna do it, like I said, it might be against the law or whatever, I don't.
To check.
Is that your wishes too? Commissioner Walker, second, is that your wishes?
Yes.
Okay,
I'd like to comment on that, and I think Commissioner Robinson's idea of countywide and not so specific on things, wide open, cover everything, and then give us the 90 days to work out. And I want to tell everybody that we have not been sweeping it under the rug or whatever. Our county attorney's been working very hard to craft language that is enforceable on this very subject. So I feel very comfortable with the language that we're going to craft after this period of time is going to be something that is really enforceable and not just words on a piece of paper. And I fully support what Commissioner Robinson's saying.
any further discussion from Commissioner Walker?
Discussion, yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this is the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it, and we should have done it 2 weeks ago. We should have done it as soon as these residents came in. We've left a window of open that thankfully no one came into our community as had in the past. I think that in addition to what Commissioner Robinson asked for, I would strongly recommend that we not only look at licensed daycares, but legally unlicensed, operating within the law, taking care of one additional family other than their own, and have them put a sign on their tree saying, I'm a legally operating unlicensed daycare, and have that be included. So anybody, anywhere, put a sign on their tree and be covered by this ordinance.
Commissioner Monson.
Okay, but you're talking about the long-term ordinance when you are referencing that. This is what we're discussing
Yes,
now.
I'm providing input to the attorney for
Okay.
drafting language for the ordinance.
All right. This, just so I can understand, this particular motion is for any new person who's not currently a resident from locating within the county, his residence within the county, any place in the unincorporated areas of the county, which is the only thing we have authority over, correct?
Correct.
If they are a class 3 sex offender, is that correct?
That is my recommendation, yes.
Okay, so that is the term of this. Okay. Now, I'm already talking to the county attorney. Can I just ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so this is broad and might not withstand the challenge of a lawsuit, is what you're suggesting. It might not challenge it because it's not narrowly drafted. It doesn't meet perhaps the constitutional test for an ordinance, but it is a moratorium, which is perhaps different. And I'm just wondering, I'm just wanting you to consider clarifying your advice to this board, because I think would be helpful for us not to go against your advice, because I think then we lose our immunity. Can you describe what happens when you go against your advice when you're taking action?
Well, there's an additional exposure to liability if you go against county or legal advice.
Okay, no.
I would say that there are a broad range of options that are available, and my recommendation was for restrictions within a certain distance from these areas where children would be identified as congregating. I would also note, however, that you indicated, and I agree, that this would be a temporary restriction. This moratorium would be for a limited amount of time until further study and can be conducted and an actual ordinance can be put in place. So I understand the goal to have a more broad prohibition against level 3 predatory offenders residing in the county as a whole.
And if I could follow up, I just announced to what I think I'm going to hear, and I would really appreciate it. So really, what we're just asking for is to make sure that we can have the room in place to develop a constitutionally sanctioned ordinance without knowing all of the parameters that we can protect against, because it's a short-term deal. Is it your advice then that a short-term moratorium, although broad, it is limited? It would also, this can meet the constitutional test of being, it's been a long time since I was in constitutional law, but I think it is, and you articulated a couple of meetings ago, and basically it's a restriction on freedom which is reasonably necessary for an important compelling public need. I think that might be the test. Doesn't this also match that in your advice? I'm just trying to clarify your advice to make sure that we're acting within it.
Well, I would say that the preferred approach would be to narrowly tailor even your moratorium to meet the compelling state interest, which is why I recommended the 2,000 square feet from any of these designated areas where children congregate. However, I understand that you are wishing that it's the intent of the board to be
more broad than that to do so on a temporary basis.
So then it is your instruction to this board that this moratorium does not violate your advice, but is on the outside limits of your advice, is that correct?
I will stand by my recommendation to narrowly tailor your restriction, and I understand your goal, but a broad ban prohibition is very much frowned upon by the law.
So your advice is that this is not constitutional?
I can't make that final determination, of course, I'm only one person and not a court of law, but my recommendation is that you would narrowly tailor your prohibition.
Mr. Chairman, I had, I guess it was a discussion with our county attorney about the 90 days, and I feel very comfortable with, although she's an attorney and answering it properly, but I feel very comfortable with the 90-day moratorium, with the prospect that we're going to come back to this board with all the specifics of the ordinance that's defensible. I asked, is the 90 days defensible? And the answer was, as long as, I don't want to put words in your mouth, as long as it was a short period of time that we come back with an ordinance that is defensible, that would be something that we could do.
Bruce, did you have any comments at this time?
We'll need to clarify the motion when you get there.
I really don't see an issue about having a limited term action by this board to protect public safety. I mean, that's part of our job, that's part of our role, is to take these type of actions if there is a need. And I think we've identified a need, and for all we know, the ordinance could come back within a week. We could schedule a special board meeting and act on it. It's just simply a period of time that we're waiting for a written ordinance. That we're providing legal notice to anyone choosing to reside here that we are in fact developing an ordinance. That's the intent of it.
Okay, quickly. Okay, so what I heard the county attorney say was that if you do this ordinance, which is broad, it goes against her advice. Therefore, you do it at your own personal risk because you lose your immunity as a public official. That's the law. I think that her advice allows us to do a moratorium. She advised we could do a moratorium. We simply limit it to 2,000. She described the terms of it, which would immediately go into place. I would plead with the board to do that, because I'm going to vote against an unconstitutional moratorium, is what I'm going to do. And I know that it's going to fall on deaf ears perhaps, but we're the government, and we as a government, as an element of the American government, we need to comply with the Constitution, and this relates to a very important and severe restriction on freedom, that is where to live. And we can't, as much as we only have freedom if we follow the rules. But Thomas Jefferson said there's no freedom in a mob, and he's absolutely right. We can both protect our community, including the people here, by passing a legal moratorium, and be Americans true and true, in my opinion, honor the rules that we live by that gives us such freedom. Our country is unparalleled with freedom that we have, and I think that we should listen to the county attorney. This is a very complex area. This is a very severe restriction on freedom. We can both have a moratorium tonight, and we can do it in a way that the county attorney, who is the attorney who's advising us, says it meets those standards which result in such freedom for all of us. So for that reason, I would ask for the motion or in the seconder to consider amending the motion as a friendly motion to the language, which would be an immediate moratorium that would immediately provide significant immediate protection to our community.
It won't cover us though.
It doesn't
Yeah,
cover us.
it does nothing.
Does not cover us.
This moratorium last 2 weeks. And for me, if someone's gonna sue me, I got a '97 Chevy pickup, they've got a tie to tail